Crimson Rivers, The Letter. Remus barely even gets to take another breath before Sirius is throwing himself across the room at speeds that would be alarming under any other circumstances. The mask clatters to the floor just seconds before Sirius is on him, and it's like they practiced it, the way Sirius genuinely just launches himself right into Remus's arms, legs wrapped around him, and Remus catches him without even stumbling. It's been so long. Oh, there you are. Here you are. Hi. Remus's heart keens, a steady throb of relief that floods his veins. As hard as he tries to cling to the memories of how it felt to have Sirius in his arms, it doesn't compare to the real thing. Nothing compares to this, to the warmth of him, the weight of him, how he smells and feels and breathes. Sirius's hands fly up to frame his face, holding him there. And then he's quite literally just dropping kisses all over Remus's face with undeniable enthusiasm. He kisses Remus's forehead, his cheeks, his nose, above and below each eye, even the scar. If it bothers him, he shows no signs of it. Just kissing down the length of it, from where it starts at the inner corner of his left eyebrow and drags down over his nose, halting at the right corner of his top lip. When Sirius reaches the end, he kisses each corner of Remus's mouth, then full on the lips, hard and bruising and fast, pulling away to speak. Hi, Sirius chokes out, then immediately kisses him again, and Remus isn't making it easy for him with how he's breaking out into a grin. His first smile in 6 months. Oh, hi. I've missed you, Remus. I've missed you so much. Remus starts, but doesn't get to finish. Shut up. Don't talk to me. I'm so happy you're here, Sirius declares breathlessly, his eyes bright. Oh, the moon is so jealous of you. You're here. Hi, you're here. Again, Remus tries to speak around his bubbling laughter, feeling ridiculously exhilarated and giddy, but Sirius cuts him off once more, with a kiss again. This time, Sirius kisses him once, twice, a third time, and then he doesn't pull away. The closed-mouthed kiss fades into an open-mouthed one, and Sirius makes a truly indecent and loud noise while shaking in Remus's arms, rattling like he's about to fall apart. Remus keeps a firm grip on him and turns around to promptly leave, which is probably a little rude considering that the others are here and may wish to greet him, but he honestly can't bring himself to care about that right now. No, instead he stumbles along up the hall to find the first door he comes across, deciding it's just going to have to be Sirius's room, because he's not wasting time to go any further. He throws open the door and kicks it shut with his foot as he moves inside, Sirius's trembling fingers slipping into his hair. The bed is thankfully not far, and Remus wastes no time in getting them to it. He's careful, lowering Sirius down with care. Like he's precious, because he is. Oh, he is. Remus is shaking too, barely even able to fathom that this is real, that this is actually happening, not just some dream. For a long time, they literally just lay there and kiss like that's all they're going to do, like that's more important than oxygen. Sirius has his arms wound tight around Remus's shoulders, fingers tangled in his hair, and Remus isn't managing much more than cradling Sirius's cheek with one hand, while the other grips his leg on the outside of where he lays in between Sirius's splayed thighs, his knees bumping into Remus's hips. The moment they break apart for some air, Sirius starts frantically fighting with his coat, his chest heaving, face flushed in a way that makes Remus's blood sing with joy. Because Sirius seems to be genuinely struggling, Remus props himself up and does his best to help, perhaps a little rushed as well. He practically shoves Sirius's coat off and flings it a little bit. An envelope falls out and lands on the bed, but Remus just picks it up and tosses it across the room carelessly with one smooth flick of his wrist. Wait, Sirius blurts out, eyes bulging. Wait, that's important, Remus. Where did it go? I have to... Can it wait? Remus cuts in, reaching up to push his fingers into Sirius's hair, his breath hitching. It's as soft as he remembers, so soft and so lovely. Sirius bites his lip, and Remus's gaze zeroes in on it. We really shouldn't wait, and I'm a terrible person for even considering it, but technically... Good enough for me, Remus declares, because truly it is, and he dives back in to kiss Sirius again, knowing that nothing could be more important than this, than Sirius. "Oh, fucking hell," Sirius mumbles against his mouth, releasing a choked noise deep in the back of his throat, and Reemmmuuuuss knows the moment he's given in and decided everything else can wait, actually, because he legitimately shudders and arches closer eagerly. In a move Reemmmuuuuss doesn't see coming, Sirius abruptly rolls them, pushing himself up and over and practically slamming Reemmmuus's back to the bed. Reemmmuuuss blinks, admittedly a little dazed, but he's not complaining. In fact, he's rather pleased. Sirius doesn't falter, doesn't show any signs of embarrassment about essentially taking charge, as it were. He seems singularly focused on having what he wants, which in this scenario turns out to be Reemmmuuuss, and Reemmmuuuss is more than happy to give it to him. He runs his hands all over Sirius, his arms and chest and thighs where he straddles Reemmmuus's hip, watching him with hooded eyes, letting him do whatever he wants. They're a bit limited on sexual resources at the moment, but Reemmmuuuss knows that's hardly stopped anyone before, because there are countless other things to do. Sirius seems to be in the same mind this regard, because what he apparently wants involves kissing his way almost frantically down Reemmmuus's throat, his chest and stomach, through his shirt, heading further and further down while tugging at Reemmmuus's belt. Reemmmuuuss closes his eyes and buries his hand in Sirius's hair. "Well, that's going over well," Pandora declares brightly, beaming as the muffled moans from down the hall drift out into the otherwise quiet room. Surprisingly, it's Regulus who looks at her and says very softly, "We don't deserve you, Pandora." James is in full agreement, and to prove so, he reaches out to capture her hand, pressing a smiling kiss to the back of her knuckles. She looks so pleased, so touched, a little teary-eyed as she smiles brightly. "That was such a kind thing for you to do, truly. Regulus is right, we don't deserve you." "Thank you," Pandora whispers. "I thought getting a servant wasn't allowed," James asks as he squeezes her hand before dropping it. Pandora chuckles. "Well, servants are only ever allowed out during assignments, and when I checked the roster, he was indeed in the lineup for servants who will be working at the party tomorrow. That worked in my favor because I may have lied a little and said that Sirius hasn't been feeling well, so he'll need tending to, and then I very casually suggested that they send us the servant we had before to handle it. In any case, he's technically feeling under the weather, Sirius, I mean, so he won't be joining us for the interview and such. I sort of figured he'd get distracted by Reemmmuuuss the moment he saw him anyway." "Ah, brilliant," James chirps. "You're brilliant. You two don't mind, do you?" Pandora asks cautiously. "That I sort of excluded him out of today, I mean. I know it makes you feel better to have him around, but I thought—" "We can stand to let Sirius have some time for himself for once," Regulus mumbles, which is rather mature of him, James thinks. "We don't mind. It's fine, Pandora. Good, even." Pandora perks up. "Lovely. Then we should be going, I suppose. Let's leave them to it." A beat later, a broken moan and the disjointed sounds of Reemmmuuuss cursing up a storm drifts out to them, faintly, and James can't help the way a laugh builds up from the pit of his stomach, rising up through him until his shoulders are shaking. Pandora's eyebrows fly up, and Regulus's nose wrinkles rather adorably. They all usher quickly from the room, indeed leaving Sirius and Reemmmuuuss to it. On the way, James glances back with a grin, internally wishing Sirius all the good things, because no one deserves them more. Reemmmuuuss is quite convinced that Sirius's mouth is capable of magic, and there's absolutely no evidence to support the contrary, because he's seen Sirius charm people with a few simple words, and this, well, he didn't even have to speak to leave Reemmmuus's brain leaking out of his ears. It's strange, because Reemmmuuuss has had people do this to him that were certainly more practiced, but he's still very certain that he's never had better. A common theme with Sirius is that what he lacks in experience, he makes up for in enthusiasm, especially when he's focused on whatever he's doing. Reemmmuuuss collapses back against the bed and tries to catch his breath, sort of limp as Sirius zips Reemmmuus's pants and crawls up the length of his body to stare down at him, hovering above. For some reason, Reemmmuus's brain can't quite work out why Sirius looks so bashful right now. No, this is the time that Sirius should be feeling very smug. Instead, he's blushing and eyeing Remus warily, like he's expecting a bad review or something. The moment Remus reaches for him, as soon as he's got his wits about him enough to remember the importance of reciprocation, Sirius leans back and shakes his head. Remus blinks. No? No, Sirius clears his throat. I mean, thank you, truly, but I don't really want that right now. I wanted to do what I did, but I'd really just like to be held and kissed, if that's all right. If you're sure, Remus murmurs. I just thought because I can feel that you're. Sirius's face glows even brighter. Yes, ignore that. It will go away. Just a body thing, but I don't want. Of course, Remus says simply, opening up his arms without missing a beat, biting back yet another groan of relief when Sirius sinks into his side and curls up against him. You don't have to explain, Sirius. It's okay. And I hope this goes without saying, but you didn't have to. No, I know, but I wanted to, Sirius assures him quickly, shifting to tilt his head so they're looking at each other. He's still very red, but Remus is pretty sure that it's because he's telling the truth. Oh, he really wanted to. I definitely, I suppose it was for me, too. Was that okay? Remus can't help it. He huffs a soft laugh and reaches up to hook his hand around the back of Sirius's neck, drawing him in to press a kiss in between his eyebrows, where they're wrinkled with uncertainty. Trust me, it was lovely. Sirius seems to relax all at once, settling down with a hum as he falls uncharacteristically quiet, studying Remus's face with focused intensity. Remus is equally quiet, helpless to stop himself from taking Sirius in, hungry for each second where he gets to trace Sirius's features with his gaze, the fading color in his cheeks, the natural aristocratic arch to his brows, the dark eyelashes framing his bright yet softened eyes, the lovely set of his mouth, the tilted lines perpetually at the corners like he's always seconds from breaking out into a grin, his bottom lip a bit more plump than the top one, both equally biteable. Sirius reaches up and carefully drifts the pads of his fingers over the scar on Remus's face, whispering, "This is new." "Yes," Remus confirms, in case Sirius is worried that he's forgotten it, even if it didn't sound like he was unsure. "This happened in Azkaban?" Sirius murmurs. Remus closes his eyes, humming quietly and just feeling Sirius's caress, basking in it. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was something to do with the next games, or maybe just a medical thing. Servants are often used as test subjects. I was just the unlucky sod that got picked out that day." "They tortured you," Sirius says softly, but there's an edge to his voice, and when Remus opens his eyes, Sirius's are sharp and gleaming with anger. "I was taken to the lower level and injected with something, made to inhale something else, and, I was a bit off my head from the pain, honestly, so I broke the restraints at my head and hit the tray next to the chair with my face." Remus scans Sirius's face with his mouth dry at the cold rage growing brighter in his gaze. "I almost died," he doesn't say. He doesn't want Sirius to know that, to be upset about it. The next words out of his mouth are a bold-faced lie, but it's one given with Sirius's comfort in mind. "I don't really remember most of it." Sirius's throat rises and falls on a harsh swallow. "I'm sorry." "It is what it is, just another crater among many," Remus murmurs, offering Sirius a tiny smile. "I do recall you saying something about the moon being jealous of me." "Oh, the moon is so jealous of you," Sirius declares, breaking out into that grin of his, the one that instantly steals Remus's breath because it's been so long since he's seen it. "The moon is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it has nothing on you." "You like my new crater, then?" Remus teases. "I don't like how you came by it, but you're only more glorious for it." Sirius grins wider when Remus starts laughing, shaking his head incredulously. "No, I'm not joking. Really, it's sexy. Makes you look raffish." "Raffish?" "It does." "Of all the words," Remus chokes out. "Rakish, then," Sirius says. "Rugged." roguish. Rapscallion. Rapscallion. Absolutely. I stand by it. Remus's lips curl up. Well, if you say it, it must be true then. That's me, Remus, your regular rapscallion. Remus the rugged, Remus the rakish, Remus the rapscallion. You're so entertained by this. Sirius releases a shaky laugh and presses closer to him, sliding his hands up and down the side of Remus's neck. I almost don't know how to act. I didn't expect. I wasn't prepared for you at all, but I wasn't the first time either, so now I suppose I'm too giddy to be anything other than silly. I'm really, really happy that you're here. You have Pandora to thank for that, Remus says fondly. She's absolutely... Sirius abruptly freezes, and then his eyes bulge before he gasps and bolts up in the bed, scrambling over himself to get up. Shit. Sirius? Fuck. Sirius, Remus calls, louder this time, but Sirius is still stuck in a tirade of curses, berating himself as he dives for the door. Remus heaves a sigh, then gets up to follow him. Oh, I'm late. I'm so late. Sirius is groaning in the main room when Remus catches up to him, a frazzled mess that fills Remus with such fondness that he can only smile. I wasn't even thinking about... I actually forgot. Oh, Remus, the interview. How did I completely forget the fucking... Sirius. They already left. They just left. Fuck, I have to... Remus steps forward and reaches out to grab Sirius by the shoulders, halting him, then sliding his hands up to squish Sirius's cheeks, making his lips pucker. He blinks, eyebrows folding together, so unbearably lovely that Remus can only dip in and steal a quick kiss. Sirius leans into it, but Remus doesn't drag it out past a short peck. Breathe, Remus orders gently, and Sirius does. Relax. The others can do one interview without you. They will be fine. I'm quite sure if they needed you, they would have waited. And it's clear that they didn't because they wanted to give you time to have a break and see me. But James and Regulus feel better when I'm there, Sirius protests weakly. Yes, they do, but I bet they'd feel better knowing that you're taking some time for yourself. Pandora has them. She'll make sure they're all right, Remus assures him. Sirius visibly hesitates, glancing at the door before looking back at Remus, chewing on his lip. Yeah, they probably won't mind, right? Pandora knows what she's doing. Remus chuckles. Exactly. Sorry, Sirius mutters, fully deflating. I'm not trying to run off and leave you. I'm supposed to be giving you a... He suddenly stops, and in the mimicry of a few moments prior, his eyes bulge as another gasp rips from his lips. He reaches down to grab Remus's hand, and then he's on the move, dragging Remus along behind him. I can't believe I forgot. Remus could not be more in love if he tried. What is it now? Remus asks with rising affection as they reach the room, and Sirius drops his hand to dart around with all the finesse of a tornado, frantically searching for something. Oh, aha, there you are, Sirius announces in delight, carelessly tossing his coat aside and scooping up the envelope Remus threw across the room earlier. Remus raises his eyebrows as Sirius whips around towards him, eyes bright, chest heaving. Okay, sit down, now. I'm sad, Remus says, once he's indeed perched on the edge of the bed, watching Sirius curiously. What is it? Sirius comes over to sink down next to him, taking a deep breath. I have something for you. I didn't think I would get to give it to you until... Well, I thought it'd take another 6 months, but no need to wait now. All right, Remus muses, flicking his gaze down to the envelope, then right back up. All he can think is that Sirius wrote him a letter in the last 6 months. I'm not even sure where to start to explain, Sirius mumbles. Uh-huh, Remus snorts. Oh, come on, out with it. Sirius swallows, then blows out a deep breath and sits up a little straighter. I met your dad. Remus freezes, his smile fading as his heart seems to give a harsh kick in his chest. Sirius watches him closely, and Remus feels a cold drip of fear slide down his spine. You... what? You met him? How? You don't know what district I'm from. 12, Sirius says quietly. You know how the Victory Tour works, Remus. I met him the very first day when we— But there's no way you could have known, Sirius, not unless you asked around to find out, and you can't do that. You can't. That draws attention to him. It puts him in danger. Remus burst out, his heart hammering in his chest. I purposely didn't tell you which district I was from. Yeah, you purposefully didn't tell me a lot of things, Sirius cuts in coldly, his gaze sharp enough that Remus instinctively snaps his mouth shut, dread sinking in his gut like a stone. Sirius, Remus croaks. Jaw clenched, Sirius shakes his head sharply. No, don't. Not now. Just look. I didn't go asking around about you or your dad, Remus, I promise. In the mayor's office there was a picture of your dad, and you look a bit like him, and that's how I knew. I asked a few people in the district for directions, but I was very discreet. No one thought much of it. You didn't ask anyone in the Hallow? Remus checks. No, I'm not that fucking stupid, thanks, Sirius snaps. Remus grimaces. I met your dad, Sirius continues, his voice losing the edge to it with every spoken word. He's a lovely man, by the way. He talked for a bit, and I offered to bring you a letter from him. No, Remus whispers, his gaze dropping to the envelope as a lump forms in his throat. That's not a letter from him. He didn't write me a letter. He wouldn't. Remus. No, Sirius, you don't understand. My dad would never take that risk, especially not for— But he did, Sirius tells him, his voice softening, likely due to the fact that Remus has just choked on his words. He did write you a letter, this letter, and took the risk for you. He loves you, Remus, so very much. Remus's shoulders wrench up as he chokes out a harsh breath, his eyes stinging as he ducks his head. It takes everything in him not to break down crying immediately, and some part of him still doesn't understand, doesn't fully believe it. Lyle has never, would never, do anything defiant to the Hallow, not out of loyalty, but out of self-preservation, and he spent years trying to get Remus to be the same way for his own safety. Remus, Sirius whispers, take it. I— Remus swallows with difficulty, blinking the tears out of his eyes as he lifts his head. Sirius is watching him with so much compassion, holding out the letter. Remus's fingers tremble when he reaches out to grab it. Is it really him? It is, I promise, Sirius murmurs. Remus stares down at the envelope, slowly turning it over in his hand. A beat later, he looks up. You didn't open it. Of course not, Sirius replies, frowning. It's yours. I love you, Remus thinks, and he almost just blurts it out, only refraining because he has the feeling that there's a lot they need to talk about before love comes up in conversation. He does love Sirius, though. Loves him dearly, with every defiant bone in his body. This man who doesn't even realize the importance of what he's just done by giving Remus an unopened envelope. Remus who owns nothing. Remus who has nothing. Remus who is not granted privacy or freedom for anything like this, for anything at all. Thank you, Remus chokes out. Sirius gives him a flickering smile and leans over to kiss him on the cheek, squeezing his arm gently before standing to his feet. You know, your dad went off to write that letter alone, so I suppose it's only fair you get to read it alone. I'll go out and make us some tea. You come out whenever you're ready, yeah? Unless you would prefer me to stay. Of course Sirius gives him options. Of course. No, I'll be out there soon, Remus says. A bit of milk and 2 sugars for my tea, if you don't mind. I remember, Sirius tells him, flashing him a quick smile, and then he walks out and shuts the door gently behind him. Remus stares after him for a long time once he's gone, just breathing, and then he looks down at the envelope. A part of him wants to rip it open, frantically, and devour the words in an instant, but a much bigger part wants to go slow, to savor every stroke of ink on the paper. To someone who has not had anything to genuinely claim as their own, other than the very mask that symbolizes each restriction he'll never escape from, this letter means the world. Remus is so very careful when opening it, refusing to cause even the slightest rip in the envelope, let alone the letter. When he draws it out and opens it, he does so slowly, delicately, like it could turn to ash at a moment's notice. My son, the letter starts, and that's all it takes. The first 2 words, and Remus already has tears spilling out of his eyes. I hope this letter finds you, as the one delivering it has assured me it will. I would like for this letter to be long and full of all the countless things I desperately wish I could tell you, but I think brevity would serve us all well. To be honest with you, I fear no words I could write would ever properly express how much I miss you every day, nor provide adequate summary for the love and concern that I feel every time you cross my mind. I'm proud to admit, as a father, that not a day goes by where I don't think about you. Days of thinking of our last fight has taught me many things about regret, and I want to tell you now that the only regret I truly have is not assuring you, even in our differences, that I would always love you and support you through anything. If you doubt anything else, do not doubt that, because I will always love you no matter what. I will always be proud to call you my son. I, too, can only be grateful to hear that you have found happiness in possibly the last place I could ever have expected it to exist. So smile and laugh and love, and never stop. Never change who you are, not for anyone. Remus folds over the letter and cries so hard that his stomach constricts. Deep, gasping sobs spill out of him as he cradles the paper to his chest and misses his father like a small child. It's been years since he's allowed himself to think about Lyle, to miss him, and it's hitting him all at once now. He held it all at bay, like that proved something. Like if he didn't let himself feel this way, it meant that he wasn't looking back on the past, on who he was determined to be, with regret. Still too proud to be wrong, too proud to admit that maybe, just maybe, he does wish he could go back and do it all so differently. Because admitting that, facing it, can't change anything now. It's too late. He's already here, and he'll never see his dad again. He'll never get to go home. When Remus was very young, Lyle used to pack Remus his lunch for school every day, and each day he left a little note for him to read. Just 3 sentences every day. Only 3, because they had made up a little code between them. Every second word in a sentence made up a secret message. Every day that secret message was, "I love you." Slowly, Remus unfurls and reads the letter over again. Slower, noticing the second word in each sentence, and by the end he has to fold forward and weep again, as the secret message echoes through his head, and through his heart. Hope would be proud of you, too. Sirius gets an odd sense of déjà vu when Remus comes into the kitchen, because for a moment all he can think about is how Lyle looked after writing the letter. Remus, too, clearly cried over it, and it's obvious to Sirius that he doesn't want to acknowledge that fact, much like his father. There's also another source of déjà vu, which comes from seeing Remus enter the kitchen, like he's seen many times before, just 6 months ago. Sirius is still marveling over the fact that he's here. He's really, actually here. That outweighs everything else, all the questions banging around in his head, all the countless things that Sirius wants to talk to Remus about. Genuinely, it feels like all he can truly do is just stare at Remus and be amazed that he's here. 2 days ago, Sirius learned that Remus killed people, and somehow that seems so trivial when Remus is within reach. It's not a trivial thing, or maybe it shouldn't be, but Sirius can't find it within himself to make it a priority. Basically, everyone Sirius knows is a murderer, so really, that doesn't bother him very much. Of course, Sirius does have a simmering level of upset bubbling within him, countless questions, and a growing need to make sure Remus knows that Sirius is angry with him. It's just, well, there's a lot of layers to his anger, so he's not even sure where to start, and Remus eyes him a little warily, like he's picking up on all those layers, every single one. "I feel like I'm in trouble," Remus murmurs as he approaches the counter, stopping a few steps across from Sirius, clearly debating on whether or not it would be a good idea to come closer at this particular moment. He chooses to stay right where he is, which is a wise decision. Sirius pushes Remus his cup of tea and says, Oh, you are, but that can wait. First, are you all right? Yes, Remus struggles for a moment, his throat bobbing, and then he exhales explosively and looks at him with soft eyes full of something warm and adoring that does immediately weaken Sirius quite a bit. I can't even begin to thank you for what you did, Sirius. You you have no idea how much this means to me. Thank you, just thank you. You don't have to thank me, Sirius murmurs. I wanted to do it, Remus. You deserve that, and more. That's all I could do, so that's what I did. You are the most considerate man I have ever known, Remus whispers, looking down at his cup of tea, but he doesn't lift it up. I'm not going to lie, that makes me feel a lot worse about the fact that I'm currently in trouble. You're sure you want to talk about this now? Sirius asks, unable to keep the sharp edge out of his tone. Remus takes a deep breath, then blows it out, and looks up at Sirius. What did I do? You tell me, Sirius retorts. Yeah, I was worried you'd say that. Remus's eyes sink shut, and he turns to lean back against the counter, rubbing both palms over his face. When he drops his hands, he opens his eyes and glares at the wall. I thought you said you didn't give a toss what my crime was, and I didn't have to tell you. You passive-aggressive prick, Sirius hisses, plopping his tea down. Don't you dare turn this around on me. I never demanded a damn thing from you. Really? Because you're rather pissed off about not getting something for someone who didn't expect anything, Remus snaps, crossing his arms. Sirius can feel his blood beginning to boil. Maybe I'm pissed off because you didn't feel it was important to mention anything before you fucked me. What does that have anything to do with this? Remus asks in disbelief. My crime? What are you saying, that I'm not allowed to have sex just because I... He stops, blinking, and then he looks over at Sirius. Wait, is that part of the reason you struggled to let yourself accept pleasure? Even though it was literally not your fault. Sirius, don't fucking lecture me right now, Sirius bursts out, raising both hands and flapping them around. I don't know all the reasons, but that's probably one of them. And it doesn't matter anyway, because my acceptance of pleasure is entirely separate from my sexual desire. They're two different topics, and we are not talking about either right now. What are we talking about? Remus asks sarcastically. If I'm honest, it's not very clear. You know what? Sirius huffs out a weak laugh and shakes his head, running his tongue over his teeth. Doesn't matter. Forget it. Knowing me, I probably will anyway. The moment Sirius starts to turn away and stomp off in a fit of dramatics, Remus groans and calls, Wait, okay, wait, I'm sorry. Come here, don't leave. If you're not going to have a fucking conversation... No, I will. I promise I will. I don't... Do you want to know why it's so upsetting? Sirius asks, turning back around, lips pressed into a thin line. It's not because I ever secretly wanted to know. I didn't go to your dad's expecting to find out what you did. I went just so I could do something for you, and for him. That's it. He's the one who let it slip. I didn't ask, and then I didn't let him explain further because I wanted to hear it from you. And yes, this does have to do with sex. Not my acceptance of pleasure, but sex. Because I need to trust to have sex, Remus. Not just me trusting you, but you trusting me. And it feels like I fooled myself into thinking it was there, but it turns out it wasn't. What? Remus rasps. No, it was. I didn't keep it from you out of mistrust, Sirius. It wasn't that. Are you sure? Sirius challenges. Because when I stood before you and told you about how I feel about being a murderer, you didn't say a word. And I didn't get a choice, Remus. I didn't get to decide to keep that from you or anyone, because it was live for the whole world to see. You knew that about me from the beginning, all of it, everything. What did I know about you, Your mom and dad's name, your best friend's name. A few little details here and there, but that was it. And you know everything about me. So, you did expect more from me, Remus whispers. Sirius feels like he's about to pull his hair out. No, that's not what I'm saying. You don't have to give me anything, not ever. I didn't ask for anything, or push you, not once. But that doesn't mean you're completely blameless in this. You know so much of my problems, especially around sex, and I'm upset because you let it happen knowing that the trust wasn't an equal exchange, and that's not fair. I'm upset because I trusted you, and I don't know if I can anymore. I told you it wasn't mistrust, not to me. I didn't see it that way, so I didn't even think about it like that. If I suspected that it would hurt you, I would have never allowed it to happen. Sirius, you have to know that. I need you to know that, Remus tells him earnestly, almost desperately. I swear to you, I trust you more than I trust myself, honestly. Then what is it? Sirius asks, completely at a loss, confused now because he genuinely doesn't understand. Remus swallows harshly and tips his head back, blinking hard and rolling his jaw. His voice is thick with emotion when he starts speaking. Sirius, I told you once that you see me at my worst every day, and it's true. I'm a servant, a criminal. I have nothing to offer, nowhere to go, and literally no value as a human being in the eyes of the Hallow. You were the first person to look at me like I was worth something in 5 years, and I just wanted to be someone who deserves that. I wanted to exist outside of what I have done. I wanted to be free from it. Remus, Sirius whispers, stricken, all of his anger evaporating on the spot when it clicks, when he finally understands that Remus keeping this to himself had nothing to do with Sirius at all. It really wasn't mistrust. I never once thought you'd look at me differently or treat me differently, Remus chokes out, his eyes shining with building tears that wrench at Sirius's heart. I just liked getting to be someone who was actually worthy of you. Stop it, Sirius croaks, shoving forward to reach for Remus, just as Remus hunches in on himself and breaks down crying in earnest. Sirius reaches up and wraps his arms all the way around Remus's shoulders, and where he tucks his head down against Sirius's chest, Remus folds into him and cries, and Sirius holds him, rocking him gently and ducking his face down to press into Remus's hair. For a long time, that's all they do. Sirius's heart is in tatters in his chest, because Remus crying and being upset genuinely throws him into instant distress. He rubs Remus's back and kisses the side of his head over and over, trying to smother him into comfort, but Remus seems to have a lot of backed-up emotional release he needs to work out. Sirius doesn't try to stop it, knowing it's probably about a lot of things. His dad, missing Sirius, the torture he's endured, and possibly many other things that Sirius doesn't know about. That's all right. Sirius doesn't need to know to be sure that he wants to take care of Remus through it. So he does, and Remus eventually calms, his tears coming to a slow halt. He stays where he is for a bit, and then he lifts his head to choke out, I'm sorry, Sirius. Shh, listen to me. Are you listening? Yes. Your worth is not measured in your past, or even your present, but rather in you, Remus. And you are invaluable, Sirius says softly. To me, to this world, to anyone who knows you, you are invaluable. Remus's expression crumbles all over again, his breath punching out of him in yet another harsh sob, and he tucks himself right back into Sirius's arms like he never left. Sirius holds him through that, too. Remus sips his tea, failing to meet Sirius's eyes at the moment. It's very good tea, just like he likes it. In all honesty, Remus doesn't think he's cried that openly or that hard with another human being other than Lily. She's the only person he's ever trusted to do it with, but now there's Sirius too, because Remus does trust Sirius. They built trust between them, and despite this hiccup, he still believes in the foundation of it. There's nothing wrong with needing to strengthen it, though, from time to time. It wasn't just me, Remus announces abruptly, finally raising his gaze to meet Sirius's. My crime, I mean. I didn't commit it by myself. Lily was there with me. Remus, stop, Sirius murmurs. You don't have to tell me. I shouldn't have. I don't like to talk about the things I've done either. I'm not entitled to. No, it's fine. I want you to know, Remus cuts in, his voice thick. His name was Fenrir Greyback, who I killed. Sirius nods slowly. And the others? The others? I didn't kill anyone else, Remus says, baffled. Your dad said people. He said you killed people, Sirius explains, as in multiple. Remus frowns. Well, I didn't. Honestly, I only killed one man. I was there. I would know. I'm not lying. I'm not saying you are, Sirius tells him quickly, raising both hands in surrender. Maybe he meant Lily, or maybe he just didn't know. People were chasing Lily even after I was captured, so maybe. Remus can't be sure. He'll never have the full answers. It was people, yes, but specifically Aurors. Greyback was an Auror. Sirius's eyes bulge. You killed an Auror? Remus, that's mental? I know, Remus mutters. Trust me, I know. They're the enforcers of the district, and quite literally hallow weapons, so this was insane of us to do. I'm very aware. It's not like we planned it. We didn't know it would come to that. If we knew, maybe... Remus, you really don't have to talk about it. Yes, I know. It's not something I enjoy talking about, but I do think you should know, Sirius. Greyback had it out for my father for practically half my life, just because my dad had a bad day and said something he shouldn't have, just once. By the time I was 20, the feud had shifted mostly to me. What did your dad say? Well, Greyback was a part of a new wave of Aurors that came in after my dad retired. And remember I told you my dad didn't like how they did things? Yeah, so he made that pretty clear to Greyback, who didn't appreciate the sentiment. And you said that anger shifted to you? Sirius asks. Remus licks his lips and tips his head to the side, huffing a soft laugh. Well, I was a bit mouthy. Why do I feel like that's understating things? Sirius mutters dryly, one eyebrow sweeping up. Remus scrunches his face playfully. Yeah, it is, quite a bit. My craters? The ones on my back? Greyback, Sirius says, eyes narrowing. Remus confirms. Just as an aside, I don't even blame you for killing him. I've heard enough at this point not to even need further context to understand why the world's better off without him. Yeah, well, I'm going to give you context anyway. All right, Sirius says levelly, nodding. Greyback regularly came into my home and did his little mandatory checks, which was just him basically tearing the place apart. He knew he wouldn't find anything, of course. He just loved the excuse to be a fucking prick. Mom and Dad took it with grace, generally, but I usually caused trouble. One day, he showed up to my house with his usual team of Aurors, but my parents were out. Lily was over. It was just me and her when they busted in. She knew these things happened to my family, but she'd never seen it before. Greyback only singled us out because of his hatred for my dad, and then me, so she'd never experienced anything like it. She was scared. She was furious, Remus corrects with a snort. Make no mistake, Lily was no flower. She was as wild and reckless as I was, at times. We were, I don't know, just always on the same wavelength, all the time. When she was level-headed, so was I. When she wasn't, I wasn't either. We did everything together, sometimes even just feeling. Sirius's face softens. I'm the same way with James. Yes, well, take it from me, be careful with that, Remus says quietly. Perhaps if one of us had been level-headed, it wouldn't have gone as it did. We were 16 when that happened. My mom was still... He stops, starts again. In any case, Lily and I were both upset and furious at the world, so we decided to find some way to get rid of him. Not by murderous means. That was not the original plan, no. Greyback was an Auror, and that comes with rules, all of which I knew intimately because my dad was one for over 30 years. I knew there was no way Greyback was following all the rules, because he was just not the sort who would, so we intended to find solid proof and turn it in. I take it that didn't happen, Sirius says. Remus sighs. Almost. We found the proof. It took us 3 years. Some of that time was just everything being on pause after my mom died. but we never entirely gave up on it. I couldn't give up on it, especially because he swallows and squeezes his eyes shut. On the day my mom died, I wasn't there. I wasn't with her in her last moments, because I was passed out at the whipping post. By the time someone let Lily know, and she helped me get home so she could take care of me, my mom was already gone. I wish, Sirius murmurs, low and dangerous, that you hadn't killed Greyback so that I could, slowly. That might be the sexiest thing I've ever heard you say, Remus informs him, opening his eyes to stare at Sirius. He goes right to fury, not stopping to pity him, and Remus finds this unbearably attractive, honestly. Tell me he died slowly, at least, Sirius grumbles. Well, he didn't die peacefully, I can tell you that. Remus clears his throat. After 3 years, Lily and I finally found the proof we were looking for. Solid, indisputable proof, I mean. We broke into his house and checked his computer, where we found that he'd been stealing money from his district funds and sending it to a woman, who we assumed he was either in love with or paying for sex, and both were against the rules, as was stealing the money. You just didn't get to turn it in, Sirius whispers. No, we didn't, Remus says softly. That's actually what we were on our way to do. Just bad timing, because Greyback came across us, and he never really missed a chance to harass me. He wanted to search Lily and I, but we had, well, what we'd had stolen, so we resisted. Just tried to get him to let us go on our way, but of course he didn't. He started trying to pat me down, so I shoved him away, and things escalated. Sirius swallows, his eyes wide. He had his gun, Remus continues, his gaze drifting off to the side. It all happened so fast. He was going to put it to my head and threaten me into complying, but we got into a scruffle, and then the gun was waving around. We were both trying to keep it pointed away from us, and then Lily sort of just started strangling him. I think she was trying to make him pass out so we could run, but the gun went off before that ever happened. It was me that pulled the trigger. To this day, I don't know if I meant to. I just know I didn't regret it. Sirius blows out a deep breath. Shit. Yeah, Remus agrees with a hoarse laugh. We had to run. The others heard the gunshots, and they'd either kill us or take us, so we ran past the train tracks for the first time, and they chased us. We couldn't both make it. There was no possible way, with them closing in on us as they were, so I told Lily to keep running, not to stop for anything, and I gave her the gun. Then I circled back and made them chase me in the opposite direction. I got caught, and I never saw Lily again. Fucking hell, Remus, Sirius murmurs, reaching up to swipe his palm over his mouth. Do you want to know the worst part? Remus whispers, a lump in his throat. Every day, I'm so vividly aware that if things had gone just a little differently, then it would be Greyback here instead of me. I'm sorry, Sirius breathes out, stepping forward to reach out and slide his hand up and down Remus's arms. I'm so sorry that any of it happened to you, Remus. None of it was fair. You should be here, not you. You're not a bad person, you know. How could you think that this makes you less worthy? You didn't have any more control in it than I did. That's just the thing, though. I did. I could have stopped it if I just left it alone. If I just gave up. My dad was constantly trying to get me to stop causing trouble, and if I listened. And what? Keep putting up with the harassment, the mistreatment, the abuse of power? You had every right to respond as you did. Just because it went wrong doesn't mean that you were. You weren't. You were right, and you don't need to feel that you are a bad person because of this. Not at all. Except I don't regret it, Remus declares bluntly, his voice steady as he meets Sirius's gaze, holding it. I feel no remorse for killing Greyback. None. I'm glad he's dead, and I'm glad I'm the one who pulled the trigger. Sirius clears his throat violently. Yes, well, you're justified in feeling that way. Also, if you're expecting me to find that appalling, well, do I have news for you. Oh, is that doing it for you? It's certainly doing something. We should Do you want to go back to bed? I can give you a blowy again, can I? Reemmmuuuuss stares at him. I tell you all of that, and your response is that you'd like to suck my cock. Sirius blushes that lovely blush of his, and Reemmmuuuuss could never have imagined that he would be laughing after the conversation he just had, and yet here he is. He can't help it, he just cracks up, and Sirius groans, lifting his hands to cover his face, blatantly mortified. Reemmmuuuuss is still laughing, helplessly, when he reaches out to tug Sirius's hand down and reel him in, grinning against his cheek, kissing him and kissing him in between breathless laughter full of relief. Sirius's face is warm against his lips. You said something earlier. Sirius hums idly, eyes closed as he drags his fingers repeatedly through Reemmmuuuuss's hair, his other hand drifting gently up and down the side of Reemmmuuuuss's arm. Reemmmuuuuss is all curled up against him, practically on top of him, and Sirius really enjoys the weight of him. He also finds it terribly adorable that Reemmmuuuuss is essentially letting Sirius coddle him after the emotional upheaval of the last hour. About a difference between your sexual desire and your acceptance of pleasure, Reemmmuuuuss continues in a mumble, picking lazily at one of the buttons on Sirius's shirt. Right, Sirius mutters, cracking open an eye. Yes, and? Reemmmuuuuss lifts his head and rests his chin on Sirius's chest, eyeing him carefully. Do you want to talk about it? I mean, it's not... I never really thought about it until you, but they're two separate things, Sirius murmurs, his eyebrows crinkling together as he tries to come up with the proper words to explain it. I suppose well, for a long time, I sort of thought that my struggles to accept pleasure influenced my sexual desire, and perhaps it does make it more complicated, but I'm me because I'm me, not because of what's been done to me. Does that make sense? Yes, Reemmmuuuuss says softly, eyes clear, patiently listening. Sirius purses his lips. I never really realized it, because I suppose I never thought about it, but it's always been this way, not feeling sexual desire, I mean. Like, I went into my games at 16, but I'd never done anything by then, not even alone, and you know, most people do at least do that, just to give it a try, or because it feels good, but honestly, it literally never crossed my mind. I just couldn't be bothered. No? Reemmmuuuuss asks cautiously, because the moment I realized I had a right hand, it was over. Filthy, Sirius comments with a snort, and Reemmmuuuuss grins at him, lopsided and flirty. It does make Sirius's stomach fill with butterflies, yes, but he can't be blamed for that. But no, I just literally never cared to, or thought about it. Then, well, there was Mary. We'd been friends for years before I ever actually formed a crush on her, and it wasn't until I did that I actually had the desire to do anything at all. Reemmmuuuuss nods. Tell me about her, Mary. Ah, she's lovely. Still a close friend to this day, someone I trust wholeheartedly. We grew up together, I guess you could say. We went to the same school, and we actually didn't live too far from each other before I moved into the Victor's village. She was the first person who ever did my makeup when I was like 12, so by the time I was 16, I was pretty sure that she was it for me, you know? Sirius muses. Not really, Reemmmuuuuss replies thoughtfully. I wasn't really the type to think in terms of settling down, not back then. Sirius chuckles. Yes, well, I'd never felt that way I did for Mary for anyone before. It was very new, and I was also really excited. Or that's how I remember it, anyway. You can ask Regulus and James. I walked around for a solid month, making everyone call me Mr. Sirius MacDonald. Stop, that's adorable, Reemmmuuuuuss jokes out, laughing quietly. A bit embarrassing, looking back. Mary was lovely about it, though. I never actually asked her out. I just failed to keep my crush a secret, and she eventually confronted me about it. Oh, I was so nervous, but in a good way, I think. I can't really remember most of it, but she was so nice about the whole thing. I think we dated for a week before I was ready to even kiss her, and she didn't mind at all. That's really sweet, Sirius. You two never... No, Sirius clears his throat and shakes his head. I went into my games not too long after, and I wasn't... Well, we never actually broke up, technically, so I suppose you could argue that we're still dating, since we never had that conversation. Remus arches an eyebrow. Is your girlfriend aware that you have a little something on the side? Believe it or not, yes, Sirius teases, grinning. Mary knows me too well. She clocked me about 2 weeks after I got back. I never said a name or your position, just admitted that I met someone. She was happy for me. She sounds brilliant, Remus murmurs. Sirius's face softens. She is. In any case, we never broke up, but I was a mess after I got back from the arena. It was just one of those known things, I suppose. It wasn't until over a year later that we actually really sat down to talk, and it wasn't the same. I wasn't the same. She had had a girlfriend at the time too, so there were no hard feelings or anything. Most of all, we were friends, and we still are to this day. Does it make you feel better, knowing that your sexual desire and acceptance of pleasure is separate, I mean? Remus asks, pressing his head up into Sirius's hand, slightly asking him to continue running his fingers through his hair, because he'd gotten distracted enough to stop. Yes, Sirius admits, picking up the movement of his hand again. I don't even know if it bothered me before, really, but I do like being sure now. I'd say that my acceptance of pleasure, or my struggles with it, have nothing to do with my sexuality. I'd also say that my sexuality is probably another reason for my struggles to accept pleasure realistically. But there's a lot of reasons for that, so it's not necessarily the fault of sexual desire itself. More like it wasn't something I ever had to sit down and think about or confront, because I never really cared to have pleasure. Not for a long time. But you do now. I do now, yes, because of you. I did before with Mary, too, but that was a long time ago, and it didn't get to go anywhere. It also wasn't a struggle for me back then, I mean. I was nervous, yes, and I needed time, but I don't know, innocently excited about it, I guess. There was no guilt or shame. Remus's lips tipped down, and there is now, even with me. Not because of you, or my sexuality. Like I said, that's entirely separate, Sirius sighs. No, it's the Hallows. Because of what they believe I am, and how bad it makes me feel to think it might be even a little bit true. I've gotten better about it, I think, especially with your help. I spent so long being exposed to everyone else's sexual desires that I sort of struggled to be okay with my own. But it's really nice getting to be excited about it again. Are you? Excited? Remus checks. Because earlier you said you didn't know if you could trust me anymore, and Sirius tugs on his hair a little. Shh, I know what I said, but that was when I was under the impression that you didn't trust me. I need a level of trust between us for sex to even be an option. A desire I have. And that's all I meant. But you do trust me. I know that now. I am sorry, you know. Hush, I know. It's okay, Remus. We talked about it. Remus searches his face and mumbles. Is that why you wouldn't let me reciprocate before? Because at the time you weren't sure about the trust? Sirius frowns, blinking. You know, actually, I'm not entirely sure about that one. I don't think so. I genuinely didn't want to get off. Seems a bit mental, I suppose, but all I really wanted was to cuddle and kiss after making you feel good. I don't know, maybe that's odd to you, but for me, it's fucking exciting. Like, it's just also new, and I liked it. That I wanted to do that for you, with you, but didn't want it in return. And you just let me. I like that too. That you just roll with it, and you don't get offended or anything. Because I think it's going to be different. Sometimes I'll want you to reciprocate, and other times I probably won't even want to do anything at all. I like that I can trust you just to be okay with all of it. So I'm getting it right? Remus asks, blinking at him slowly, paying attention like this is very important to him. It is, Sirius realizes, and it makes his heart clench when he works out that Remus wants to treat him well. You're getting it right, Sirius confirms, ducking his head forward to press a gentle kiss to Remus's mouth, unable to stop himself from grinning in delight, full of love. "I'm sorry I didn't get it right before," Remus says, yet again. Sirius groans in exasperation. "Oh, stop it, would you? Please don't fret about it, Remus. We've talked about it, and well, honestly, I think it's good that we did, and I think it wouldn't be good to keep clinging to it. I know you're sorry, and I am too. It's okay, I promise it is. Yes, well, you're right," Remus admits sheepishly. "First time for everything," Sirius teases with a wink, ruffling Remus's hair playfully. "You have your mother's hair, you know. Saw a picture of her and you. She was beautiful." Remus's eyes soften. "She was, yeah. I always looked more like my dad, though." "Oh, yes, I noticed." Sirius wiggles his eyebrows playfully, breaking out into a grin. "If your dad is any indication of what I have to look forward to seeing when you get older, I am a very lucky man. Phew, he is just—" "Sweetheart, I'm begging you, please stop," Remus mutters, squeezing his eyes shut. Sirius bites his lip, fighting a laugh. "He was wearing suspenders, Remus. I could barely contain myself." "Oh, for fuck's sake." "No, really, I think I actually have a chance. We're on a first-name basis, your father and I." Remus opens his eyes and flatly says, "You are now?" "Mm-hmm. He likes me," Sirius declares smugly. "I made him laugh. I bet if I put in the work, I could—" "Literally stop," Remus cuts in, reaching up to cover Sirius's mouth with his hand. All right," Sirius mumbles, as soon as Remus lifts his hand. Sirius smiles at him softly. "Anyway, all jokes aside, your dad really was a nice man, Remus. I was very nervous about meeting him, and I wanted to make a good impression, ridiculously enough. I think I got his approval, though." "Did you?" Remus' eyes sparkle with amusement. "That's good to know. He's always been a good judge of character, so that doesn't surprise me one bit." I did make a complete fool of myself," Sirius admits sheepishly. "So I may have accidentally told him that we had sex. Just blurted it out like an idiot, and then I immediately started panicking as soon as I had. I—" Remus blinks. "How would that ever even come up in conversation, Sirius? You just met the man." "I was fussing a bit about— well, it was after he let it slip about your very justified crime," Sirius explains. "I proceeded to immediately let it slip that I felt you should have at least mentioned it before we had sex. And then it all just went downhill from there. I'm not joking, Remus. I panicked." Remus huffs out a soft laugh and shakes his head in what Sirius knows is pure amazement. "You absolute mess of a human being. What did he say?" "Well, honestly, he just said that he expected nothing less from you, and also that it pleased him to know that you were still being a rebellious little shit." Sirius pauses. "I'm paraphrasing. Obviously. Continue," Remus says, amused. "He also— well, that's when I made him laugh. When I tell you I panicked, I mean I panicked," Sirius insists. "I was scared he'd think I coerced you, so I started rambling to explain that I hadn't, then freaked out because I kept accidentally cursing in his house. I confessed that I'm in love with you before I ever got to tell you, and he just ended up laughing, but he seemed happy overall to know that you're—" Sirius stops. His hand freezes in Remus's hair. Remus is staring up at him, lips parted. "Loved," Sirius finishes softly, his eyes sinking shut. Fuck. Oh, that's not— I cannot believe that I just— "You're in love with me," Remus breathes out, and when Sirius opens his eyes, his heart flips over like it's falling over a cliff from the way Remus is looking at him. "You're in love with me, and you told my dad you're in love with me, and you're in love with me. You love me. You're in love with me." Wait. Go back," Sirius says weakly. "That wasn't even close to romantic. I wanted to tell you in a better way. Like, I don't know, with wine or something. Oh, that was shit. That was absolutely the worst." "When did you know?" Remus cuts in, his gaze locked with Sirius's, more intense and focused than Sirius has ever seen it. It makes Sirius get very warm, very quickly. "When did you realize? What was your moment, I mean?" Sirius frowns slightly, then blinks. I don't remember. He shakes his head quickly when Remus briefly looks stricken, like he's horrified by the thought that Sirius lost that moment, which would be upsetting, except, no, not in a bad way. There wasn't a moment that I just knew. It was just there, as absurd as that may sound. I don't think it's something I lost, Remus. I think it's something I've always had. There's only a second between the last word falling from Sirius's lips and Remus replacing it with his own, practically crawling up so he can reach, so he can fold over Sirius and kiss him like he's trying to pour himself into Sirius and disappear within him. Exist with him always, stay and never leave. Sirius tangles his finger in Remus's hair and lets himself be kissed, lets himself be utterly obsessed and enamored with every second of it, lets himself want it and take it and moan into it. Remus kisses him like he's trying to devour him, and it's so good. It feels so good. Sirius can't get enough. No, he literally hasn't had enough, and so maybe he whines when Remus pulls away, trying rather desperately to pull him back in. But Remus resists to whisper, "The day after the Hunger Games, after Regulus got released from the infirmary, when you and I were taking a moment and you started giggling because I told you that you were precious to me. That was my own moment. That's when I knew. When you knew that you... Sirius sucks in a stuttered breath, his heart thumping hard in his chest, feeling shaky and faint with excitement and hope and love and want and so many things all at once, as Remus is prone to making him feel. When I knew that I loved you, that I love you, that I'm in love with you, Remus tells him. Come here, come here, come here, Sirius chants breathlessly, reeling him in and quaking beneath him like a fault line splitting open into a chasm, more space for things to flood into and things to spill out of. He feels so much, all of it good, and only Remus can do this to him. Sirius? Remus croaks, as Sirius starts snatching at his shirt and squirming underneath him. Sex, Sirius blurts out. Sex right now. That's honestly the best he can do with how urgent he is at the moment, but that's apparently all Remus needs, because he immediately says, "Yep," and starts getting undressed. Sirius loves him so much.